So I turned 20 years old, unconscious in the back of an ambulance, got to the hospital and I caused such a scene that a security guard had to pin me to the floor, okay? Here are some of the worst experiences of my life. Yeah, I want to start with a little disclaimer. I'm in no way proud of any of this behaviour. Drugs led to some of the worst experiences of my life and I'm still haunted to this day by mistakes I made on drugs. I'm in no way condoning any of this behaviour. If you're someone that deals with any of these problems, yeah, I've got some advice at the end of this video and you can always speak to people, you can always talk to me, okay? So, growing up, I was always fascinated by drugs. By the time I was 16, I'd done almost every genre of drug. It was always sort of out of curiosity. I was curious how they felt. I was curious what all these rock stars I idolized were doing. And a lot of it was social anxiety as well. I just wanted to not be shy anymore. I wanted confidence and I wanted to be confident around people and have good conversations with people. And I inevitably thought that drugs was my solution to that. Yeah, I had lots of friends who were druggies, but it was always me who was the bad influence. I was always the one who was going further than anyone else. I was always the one doing drugs on my own. I remember celebrating my 16th birthday on my own in my bedroom with a blister pack of codeine, just nodding out while my parents were downstairs. It's tragic, it is tragic. But yeah, I had some pretty rough experiences with drugs over my teenage years. I lost days to Valium over lockdown, but we're gonna skip ahead to when I was 19 and I just moved out and I was living independently on my own with some friends. So at this time, I'd recently pushed away my closest childhood friend. That was my own fault. I was hopelessly lonely. I was so depressed and I was just drinking and doing drugs loads, yeah. So I remember spending evenings at my desk with a whole bottle of whiskey, trying to write songs, or days I'd go to work, I'd do codeine before I got to work, and then at work, I'd do cocaine in the toilets. I was getting as fucked up as I could, as often as I could. I was completely out of control. I was going hungry, I was spending money out of the band pot, I was asking my parents for money. This was a time when the Pings were starting up, I was just starting to make my first impressions on the Bristol music scene, and I probably deserve a medal or some kind of trophy for possibly the absolute worst first impressions any musician has ever made on their local music scene. I'd go to parties with my housemates and I would be the drunkest person there, the most coked up person there with the least social skills of anyone there, and I was making fucking awful jokes. I was just being an absolute nightmare to be around, but I just didn't see that. I didn't realise that. It was strange because I was so proud of myself. I was making an absolute fool of myself, but to me I was confident, I was finally out of my shell, I was finally speaking to new people. I was proud of the fact that I was fighting my social anxiety, but no one else saw it that way. One particular story, I remember that I went to a party and I thought I was being tremendously helpful when I was in the kitchen and saw a blunt kitchen knife and I was like, right, I'm gonna sharpen this because I'm helpful. The intentions were good and I was alone in that kitchen, but some people walked in and they didn't see the good intentions. They just saw the most coked up person at the party, the drunkest person at the party, who is now holding a kitchen knife. Yeah, they did not see it very well. But yeah, no one was in danger, no one was threatened. My intentions were good, but it just came across so poorly. So around my 20th birthday, I quit my job and I decided I was going to do drugs full time. I had a bit of money saved up and I descended into absolute madness to the soundtrack of Dirt and In Utero. Cocaine had stopped having as much of an effect on me, so I started injecting it to make it go further. Stick the needle in my vein, I'd pull it out, I would spray the little blood left in the needle all over the wall, I would undo the belt and I would shoot to the fucking stratosphere and I would fall pitifully in love with myself. I was miserable, I felt so hopeless, and yet I was so seduced by it. I was fucking pinned to that bed. A week went by in the blink of an eye, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed with a doctor standing over me, shining a torch in my eyes. The night the ambulance was called, I was on a cocktail of oxycodone, Valium, a few beers, some weed, and all of the cocaine I was doing. The cocaine was probably the only thing keeping my heart beating at some points. My arms looked like I'd had a fight with a cactus. And my housemate found me unconscious on the floor. He had to give me CPR before he called the ambulance. It must have been so traumatic for him, and I'm so deeply sorry, and I'm so grateful for him, and he really saved my life that day, so what a legend. So yeah, I got to the hospital, and I wasn't done then. Yeah, I was causing so much of a scene. I just wanted to get home and do more drugs. I'm in pajamas, I have no shoes, and I just want to get out into the freezing cold January night. I was a danger to myself. And I just kept causing such a scene. They had to send a security guard to come and watch me. And I kept trying to run past him. He had to pin me to the floor. The tragic thing was, I knew that security guard. He did shifts at the nightclub I worked at. And he must have recognised me. He must have seen me. at my lowest point, and I'm so embarrassed he had to see me like that. So I woke up the next morning and I was sober and I saw the situation I was in and I was like, okay, this is the wake-up call. I cannot go back to the life I was living. My parents were both out of the country at the time. My mum was in Athens volunteering with some refugees, but she'd flown back that morning to come and see me, to be with me. And yeah, she helped me clear out my bedroom. She helped me properly dispose of all the needles. I was £400 in debt to a drug dealer. I was a shell of the person I'd been even months before, but she just loved me like I needed to be loved in that point in time. Yeah, I just went home. I lived with my parents for a couple months, and I'd love to say I had some horrible struggle trying to get sober, but it was so easy because I knew I could not go back. I knew how bad it could be and I knew how quickly it can get there, and I wanted more than anything else to get sober. Yeah, the first few days I was just trying to learn who I was again. I was learning all the things I enjoyed doing again, going for walks, eating home-cooked meals, just watching films, reading books. For a year I was doing so well. I was so into the band, I was so into my fitness, I wasn't even drinking. Then I started uni and I started going out more, and slowly and surely I started doing cocaine again. I started relapsing. I spent so much of my first year at uni alone in my bedroom doing cocaine, playing guitar and ruining relationships with people I'd just met. And it wasn't until I'd finally got out of that environment that I could properly stick to it and stop relapsing. So this brings us to where we are today. It's been 5 years since that overdose. It's been 3 years since I stopped relapsing. And I'm not going to pretend I'm flawless. Yeah, sometimes I'll drink, some very, very occasionally I'll smoke weed, but I always sort of orbit and come back to this baseline of not doing anything at all, not even drinking coffee, because that's just the sort of person I want to be. That's the way I see myself. That is the identity I formed after this. I think if you want to get sober, you really need to form an identity around being sober. You can't just mechanically stop doing drugs and think that's you sorted. You're still going to relapse if that's your mindset. You need to form an identity around the person you are when you're sober. You need to reconnect with the things you used to love, and you need to be happy sitting in discomfort sometimes, and you need to find new coping mechanisms when that discomfort comes up. And you need to find a purpose, you need to find a reason why you want to stay sober. For me, it's music. I don't like going out late at night drinking because I want to wake up early in the morning and write a song before I go to work, or I want the option to do that, at least. I think it's particularly difficult in the music industry because it's so much part of the culture, and so many of these people we idolise have got serious drug problems that are widely known about, and it becomes part of this culture where it's like, oh yeah, people like us do things like this. This is just the way it's done. It really doesn't need to be that way. When I was younger, I fell into the trap of having all these people I idolise who made beautiful music, that I loved their music, and they all had this solution to their problems that I thought would also be the solution to my problems, and I lost years of my life to that thinking. I think as a generation of artists going forward, we should all really try and challenge this idea that it's just part of the culture, that it's rock and roll, baby, sex, drugs, rock and roll. It's that drug use and heavy alcohol use, problematic drug use is normalised and glamorised, and it's just part of the culture, because allowing these things to be normalised ruins lives. Personally, I aspire to be the role model I never had, to be a role model to people like me who didn't have the right people to idolise growing up. And yeah, a time will tell whether that is what happens, but that is what I aspire to be. And I don't think we need to keep perpetuating these same mistakes that have been made for generations. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe, motherfuckers, and rock and roll. Keep on rock and rolling, motherfuckers.